Good morning, boys and girls. How are you? And we continue to pray for you all and are so looking forward to seeing you again. We just cannot wait until Kids Zone is back. In today's story, we see how God rewarded a Shunamite woman for her faith and obedience. It was the same woman who we heard about from James a few weeks ago. Do you remember the story? She made a room where Elisha could stay when he came to visit. She showed such kindness to Elisha that God gave her a son. After a few years, something really sad happened. The boy took ill and he died. She ran to Elisha because she had faith that he could heal her son, and he did. The woman was delighted and fell to her knees praising God. Today we hear of how Elisha met the same woman again. He spoke to her and warned her of something that was going to happen. He told her there was soon to be a famine in Israel. This meant there would be very little food for her and her family to eat, and it wouldn't be for a short while. The famine was going to last for 7 years. Imagine not having enough food for such a long time. There was nothing else for it. She would have to leave. Elisha told her family to leave, to go anywhere. The Bible tells us in 2 Kings chapter 8, this is exactly what she did. She listened to Elisha. She knew that he was a man of God. After all, he had already brought her son back from the dead. She knew she could trust him. I'm sure it was really hard though. The Shunamite woman owned a farm and some land. Now remember, Elisha told her that a famine was coming. At the time she left, there was probably tons of food. It would have been so difficult for the woman to leave everything behind and travel to somewhere she would be a complete stranger. It is another example of her great faith. The Bible tells us she left Israel and went to the land of the Philistines, where she stayed for 7 years. After the 7 years had passed, the woman and her son returned. But when they got to her farm and her land, they found that someone else had taken it over. She decided to go straight to the king and plead for him to give her the land back again. While she was heading to the palace, on her way with her son, Elisha's old servant Gehazi, do you remember him? He was having a wee chat with the king. The king knew that Gehazi was Elisha's servant, and he wanted to find out more about him and the miracles that he had performed. Maybe the fact that Israel had just come out of a 7-year famine had made the king a little bit more interested in Elisha and the God that he served. Gehazi was just in the middle of telling the story about how Elisha raised a woman's son from the dead when who should walk into the court? Yep, you've guessed it, the woman and her son. Here she is, Gehazi shouted. My master and king, this is the mother and son I was just talking about. I mean, what are the chances? God was certainly in the middle of that situation. The king was able to hear about the miracle from the very people it happened to. When the woman asked for her land back, the king granted her request. I mean, how could he refuse a woman that God had done so much for? He chose a palace official to help her get everything she owned back again. And not only that, but all the money that was made from her land in the past 7 years was to be given to her also. Look at what God had done for this woman. He had looked after her and made sure she got what was owed to her and more. He made an ungodly king do something very good by restoring the widow's land and by giving her the extra money. God rewarded this woman for her kindness to Elisha and for the great faith she showed. He used an ungodly man to show his love for the woman, and in a way, this made the love seem even greater. In our lives, God can work through anyone to show his love to his people. When he uses people we don't really expect him to, like the ungodly king, it leaves us in no doubt that it is God taking care of us, showing how much he loves us. Look out for ways that God is taking care of you this week and showing you how much He loves you. And don't forget to thank Him for it. Thank you for listening.